Yes guys, welcome to the Luke's Properties YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to find your first rent-to-rent deal. Now, many of my mentees struggle with this part. I struggled with this in the beginning. In this video, I'm going to break down the 4 steps to getting your first rent-to-rent deal. Let's get into it. For those of you who don't know what rent-to-rent is a property strategy where you rent a property on a fixed long-term agreement with a landlord. Then you may spend some money refurbishing the property on a cosmetic basis, or the property may already be furnished and ready to go. And then you'll re-rent the property out to your own tenants for a premium. So let's get into it then. So step 1, the first thing you need to do is work out which strategy you're going to choose. So you have rent to rent, but under rent to rent you have other subcategories like rent to rent HMO and rent to rent serviced accommodation. Now it's down to you to choose which strategy is going to work best in your chosen investment area. You have to bear in mind the location, the type of people that are living in that area. Do you have businesses? Do you have trades coming and working in that area? These are the things you need to consider when you're doing your due diligence. So which strategy are you going to use? Serviced accommodation or rent to rent HMO? Rent to HMO will involve you renting an HMO from a landlord over a fixed term. Then you may spend some money refurbishing the property, and then you're going to aim to rent the property out for a premium price on a room by room basis. And the tenants will have AST contracts, or if you rent the whole property, then you rent the property under a company let agreement. Rent to serviced accommodation is slightly different. This will involve you renting a smaller property, maybe a 2 or 3 bedroom house. You'll furnish the property, or the landlord will furnish the property, and then you'll rent the property out on short-term stay platforms such as booking.com, Airbnb, and you'll rent the property out by the night. So you'll be charging a nightly rate similar to the hotels, and your tenants won't have contracts because they'll be guests that are only staying for a short period of time. Another thing to consider when you're choosing your strategy is what skills do you already have. You may be quite handy, you may be quite good at DIY, in which case it may suit you better to go down the rent to HMO route, because you may be able to take on a distressed HMO and do a lot of the cosmetic refurbishment yourself. Maybe you could do some decorations, some painting, along with building some furniture. Doing these sort of jobs yourself could save you money on your initial startup cost, which will ultimately increase your return on investment and how quickly you get your initial investment back. Or maybe you have an eye for interior design. Maybe that's your skill set, in which case serviced accommodation may suit you better, as you're going to need to furnish the properties to a higher standard as you are competing with the hotels. So you're going to spend more on your furniture just to make sure you get those good reviews on booking.com and Airbnb. Also look online and see which trades are coming to the area, what developments are happening. Be busy, be resourceful. Really try and know your target area and understand the supply and demand. Look on Spare Room, look on AirDNA. Do some market research. Really try and understand the supply and demand in your chosen investment area. Step 2, you're going to need to set yourself up a limited company. Now, I get this question all the time. Can I do this in my own name? Should I do it as a sole trader? And the answer is yes, you probably can. But best practice is to start a limited company. Now, I know this can take half an hour of your time, it can be quite fiddly, it can be quite a tedious process, but it's worthwhile setting yourself up properly from the beginning so that you have a solid foundation. Another thing when you're looking at choosing your investment area, you need to work out whether you can afford to work or operate in that area. When I first started in rent to rent, I was looking in London. A 5-bedroom HMO was going to cost me around £2,500 to £3,000 per month to rent. That upfront rent plus my deposit, and including furniture, which you could easily spend £500 per room, was meaning that it was going to cost me around £8,000 to get started in rent to rent in London. So I then chose to go down to Wales, where it was practically half price. The cost of a 5-bedroom HMO in Wales to rent was around £1,000 at that time. I'd maybe spend £300 per room on furniture, so each deal in Wales was costing me around £4,000 rather than £8,000 in London. So to me it was a no-brainer. I can make my money work a lot harder for me outside of London, and these are the things that you'll need to consider too. Another thing that a lot of people miss is when you are applying to rent these properties, you will be checked. The estate agent will check your company to make sure that you are compliant, and because you've set up a new company, you have no track record of income within that company, so they're going to need to look at your income, or you're going to need a guarantor. So you've chosen your strategy, you've chosen your ideal investment area, you've set yourself up as a limited company, you have a solid foundation. So now we move on to step 3. Now this is where you need to really understand how your service can add value to landlords. Before you can communicate this message to landlords, you need to understand it yourself. So this is where you need to get educated, you need to practice. You need to really understand what are the perks of my business. Why would the landlord choose to work with me rather than doing this themselves or working with another estate agent. So take time making notes, write down the pros of working with you, write down the cons of working with other companies and working by themselves as landlords, as self-managing landlords. Once you've studied this and you really understand the value in your service, then it's time to move on to step 4. Now it's time to move on to the 4th step, which is the most difficult step and the step that most of my mentees struggle with. Now this is when you actually have to start communicating your message to landlords and estate agents, and you need to start pitching yourself. This is where you need to start communicating your message to landlords and estate agents alike. You need to be clear and concise, and you need to communicate this message consistently on an ongoing basis for a sustained period of time. So with myself, for a good 3 to 4 months, I was driving down from London to Wales every single weekend and going to speak to letting agents, sitting in the shop with them, explaining my service, explaining the value in my service, and trying to come to an understanding of how we can work together. Now this was 3 to 4 months of unpaid work, but as time went on, this work started to compound. And it was because of these relationships that I'd built with these estate agents that then eventually allowed me to get my first deal. So sometimes you have to do some free work in the beginning. You have to build things up. You have to build trust. Remember, people like to do business with people that they like, know and trust. And trust is earned. So you need to go and earn that trust. And how do you do that? Well, you need to build rapport with people. Be friendly, be likable, and most importantly, be useful. Come from a place of value. You also need to speak to landlords. Can you speak to landlords directly on some of the online portals? OpenRent, Gumtree, Facebook. If you can get on the phone to landlords and communicate your message clearly, maybe you can set up a meeting, and on the meeting will be where you can actually demonstrate how you can add maximum value to them. And that's when they can get a feel for you as a person, and you can demonstrate that you will offer more of a personal service than say a larger estate agents would. So you need to get used to being told no. And what that will actually do is allow you to practice. So when people tell you no, don't just take that as an answer, ask them why. Start making notes of why landlords or estate agents have said no. And then what you can do is work through those notes and start to come up with a solution so that every time you get told no in the future, you have a solution straight away ready to fire straight back at them. You're going to have to hear no often before you hear yes. So my advice would be get as many no's as possible. Each no means you're moving closer to yes. Just remember that. Don't get discouraged. Keep going. Prepare yourself for hard work and set yourself realistic targets. This could be speaking to 10 to 15 estate agents every single week. Set yourself a goal of doing that. Commit to that target. And within 3 months, you're going to have spoken to loads of different people, and they could all turn out to be potential leads in the future. So go and put the work in. Go and get used to being told no. Go and speak to 10 estate agents. Go and speak to 5 landlords every single week. Think of cool ways to market to landlords. Think of cool ways to get in touch with landlords. Remember, estate agents speak to landlords before you do. So how can you get to the landlord before estate agents do to offer your services? You need to market yourself aggressively, and you need to put your service in front of the right people, and you need to be able to communicate that service. So just to summarize, the 4 steps to finding your first rent-to-rent deal. So step 1, choose your strategy. Are you going to do serviced accommodation, or are you going to go down the HMO route? Step 2, set your company up properly and understand the supply and demand in your chosen investment area. Step 3, learn and understand the value in your service. And step 4, start communicating the value in your service on a consistent basis to the right people. Do the work, be consistent, be trustworthy and responsible, and be likable. If you follow these steps, then it's only a matter of time before you get your first rent-to-rent deal. I hope that helps, guys. If you have liked this video, please remember to like, comment. We're going to be answering questions on an ongoing basis every week on YouTube now. So if you do have any more questions, then just pop them down below in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.